Hi guys, it is Thursday, June 25th, and I'm here to give you your video lesson. We're going to keep this one short and sweet. Today we are going to talk about the themes of A Good Man is Hard to Find. You should have read it yesterday. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you did your quiz. Actually, I probably already graded at this point, but make sure that you got that quiz done, and you have 2 quizzes today. One quiz is over the vocabulary words that you should have been working on all week. Those vocabulary words, we went over them Monday, and those are the words that were pulled out of the story that we read. So hopefully you understood the story because we did a pre-teaching of those words. And then now, after you practice the words, it's time to show me that you understood them. You have a quiz on vocab.com that's due tonight before midnight. You also have a quiz on compound sentences, fanboy conjunctions, and comma splices. This quiz is on No Red Ink. It is due by midnight, so make sure you get those 2 things done because they are grades and they are things that we've been working on all week, so I hope that you mastered them. And then the last part of A Good Man is Hard to Find is we're going to talk about the themes in the story. We've already talked about some of the characters, some of the symbolism, and we've talked about some of the historical context and the setting. So we have this idea of morality that we keep seeing coming up, is even in the title, A Good Man is Hard to Find. So the grandma thinks of herself as being a lady and being a good person, but when it comes down to it, she's judgmental, nasty, racist, and she doesn't seem to care a whole lot for her grandchildren or for her family members. Even at the end, when her family is being shot, she's mostly just concerned for herself and maybe her son, but not her grandchildren or her daughter-in-law. And we can see her like begging for her life and not exhibiting a lot of concern for the other characters who are supposed to be her family. So she keeps talking about goodness and being a good person, but she's actually a pretty horrible person. So the author wants us to be thinking about what does it mean to be a good person. And so that's a theme that's constantly being addressed. At the end, the grandma even says, I know that you're a good man, to the man who is murdering her family. Now, she's probably just saying this to him to flatter him, but initially she does talk about him being from a good family, and it's like, what does that mean? Why does that matter? If you're from a good family but you're a murderer, like, that kind of takes away from your character. It shows that you're not a good person. Your actions should speak more loudly than your reputation, your family, or your bloodline, or some weird thing like that. So the author really wants us to think about, what does it mean to be good? What does it mean to think that you're good? How should we perceive our own actions? You might think you're a good person, but if you don't do good things, then you're not good. That's basically what I take away from that. Okay, next we have this concept of nostalgia. It's a theme that we see. Nostalgia is a really good word that we should know for English class. Nostalgia means like a looking back to the past and kind of longing for it and wanting a better time, a simpler time. We all feel nostalgic for some things sometimes, so it's not a bad thing. It's just like when you think back to the best memories from your childhood and you get that warm fuzzy feeling, it's like you're happy it happened, but you're a little sad it's over. That's nostalgia. So the grandma and then also the grandma and the man at the gas pump at the beginning, they keep talking about nowadays people aren't, it's a good man is hard to find. Nowadays, people don't treat you the way that you should be treated. Nowadays, people have no manners, no class. So, and she keeps talking about a man that she used to date and a place that she went. And you can see that the grandma is very focused on her past and not focused on her present or her future. She's currently going on a road trip with her grandchildren. This should be something fun for her. Most grandparents are enjoying their time being grandparents, but it's clear to us that she doesn't really care for her grandkids too much, and she doesn't seem to be very engaged with her family, and all she's doing is sitting there talking about the past and how great that was and how now everyone's trash. And so the theme of nostalgia comes up sort of that we shouldn't be too focused. I would think the theme would be that we shouldn't be too focused on the past, because you should be focused on the present. And things always seem better in the rearview mirror. Like, things always seem great in your memory, but like there are actually lots of things about the present day that are not as great. So yeah, that's nostalgia. The grandma is obsessed with her past and like how things used to be better, and I think that the author's trying to point out the flaws in that logic. Hypocrisy is another theme that I see here. Hypocrisy, if you're a hypocrite, it means you say one thing and you do another. We've already talked about this, but the grandma keeps talking about being a good person and finding a good man and having manners and being a lady. But in actuality, her actions and her words show us that she is not a good person. So she is a hypocrite. On the flip side, the misfit, he knows that he's a bad person. And we almost think of the misfit as being a better character than the grandma, which is crazy because the misfit is a murderer. A misfit, like the grandma, she keeps talking about religion and like going to church, but at the end, when she's supposed to be praying for her life, she can't even come up with a prayer. She's a phony. She's a fake. Whereas the misfit, he is pretty upfront and he sees himself clearly, and he articulates his meanness and his cruelty and his violence clearly, and he doesn't have false advertising. So we see like the misfit is a bad person and he knows it, and there's some kind of like simplicity in having this moral code that the misfit has. Yeah, it's messed up, but he has no pretenses, or he has no phoniness or falseness about who he is. Where we see the grandma, who is a bad person, but she actually tries to show off how great she is all the time, and then that makes her a hypocrite. And so I think the author's trying to point out the hypocrisy of a lot of people who, especially like in the South, because they might have manners, but then like they're actually nasty, mean people. So that's like a social commentary or criticism that the author has on society. Violence or depravity. So we see the misfit is mentioned at the beginning as being a murderer who's out of jail. And then, you know, they go on the car trip and all this stuff happens. And then at the end, it's like brutal and shocking. Like the two men who are with the misfit keep pulling family members out into the woods, and then like you hear gunshots, and then you know that they're dead, which is kind of like shock value. You're like, whoa, they just murdered those people in cold blood for no reason. And the misfit is pretty insane. Like, he says here at the end, let me find it. Scrolling. I can't find the quote I was looking for. Oh, no pleasure but meanness. So he says here at the end, Jesus was the only one that ever raised the dead, the misfit continued, and he shouldn't have done it. He'd thrown everything off balance. If he did what he said, then it's nothing for you to do but throw away everything and follow him. And if he didn't, then it's nothing for you to do but enjoy a few minutes you got left, and the best way you can, by killing somebody or burning down his house or doing some other meanness to him. No pleasure but meanness, he said, and his voice had become almost a snarl. So the misfit lives his life with this really messed up moral code where he's like, okay, so either Jesus did raise someone from the dead, or he didn't. We don't really know. He doesn't necessarily believe in Jesus, but he's going to live his life enjoying himself, and the way that this man enjoys himself is by, quote, burning down a man's house or killing somebody. So this man has this like moral compass that is off. He's saying that he's going to live his whole life just by deriving pleasure out of other people's pain. That's pretty psychopathic if you ask me. So the misfit I think we would say like he is morally depraved, like he is maybe insane, we don't really know, but he's like what you would call evil, but he's not a hypocrite. He is violent and evil, but he sees himself clearly and he speaks clearly about himself, and he doesn't try and give off any pretenses like pretending to be good. So that's kind of interesting. And then the last theme that we see here is class and society, because the grandma is obsessed with like social class, and we kind of already talked about this, but she talks about someone being a good man and being a gentleman and herself being a lady, and that means like I'm a person of a certain social standing, of a certain, not necessarily wealthy, but like I have these manners, I have this education, I have this good family. And ultimately I think the author's trying to tell us that you can be a bad person regardless of your social class, and I think that that's true. So these themes are topics that are coming up that are true about life that the author's trying to point out to us. Social class doesn't matter. You could be good or bad regardless of social class. Some people are violent and nothing can deter them from their depravity. That's another theme. Hypocrites are some of the worst kind of people. Like saying one thing but doing another is a horrible quality. Being a hypocrite is a horrible quality in a human being. Being obsessed with nostalgia and looking to the past doesn't help you live in the present. That's one of the messages that we have here. And then the last one about morality and goodness, I would say like, this is very cliche, but actions speak louder than words. You're not good because you say you're good. You're good because you do good things. And so we can take these lessons that this author is trying to tell us from this story and apply them to our lives. And that's what makes something a universal theme. A theme is not something just about the grandma or just about the misfit. It's a message that we pull out of this short story and then we think about it in our own life. Like, don't be a hypocrite. Don't judge people based on their social class. You're always gonna run into some violent people in this world, and there's no explanation, rhyme, or reason for them. Pay attention to the present. Don't be obsessed with the past. These are all things that we should be thinking about and that we should be learning in life. And like, if we do pay attention to literature, it gives us wisdom. It's not just talking about Southern Gothic. It's not just talking about the characters or the language or the figurative language or anything like that. It's also giving us these messages that we should contemplate and think about, and like, what is the meaning behind, the deeper meaning behind this story, and how does it apply to me? Okay? So I hope you all had a good week. Make sure that you go on there on the hub. No, not the hub today. On vocab.com and No Red Ink and get those 2 quizzes done. And I hope you enjoyed this story. I really like it. I like dark, twisted stuff. Maybe that's just who I am. So have a good one. Bye.